Just to give a quick introduction, Yomi is a multi-award-winning journalist who is currently the women's columnist at The Guardian and a columnist at The iPaper. She is also co-author of the best-selling book Slay in Your Lane, which is amazing, The Black Girl Bible. So let's give it up for Yomi. And we have Jaya, who is a future journalist, maybe at The Guardian and The iPaper too, and has just finished her year of mentoring as well. So we've got some juicy questions for Yomi, and then we'll open it up to some questions from you guys as well. So have a think about if there's any burning questions you want to ask.
How did you get into journalism?
God. And you guys gave me these questions, so I should have actually prepared. It was probably about 8 years ago. I was studying law at Warwick University. When I said law, I thought everyone was going to be like, but yeah, I was studying law, really hated it. Quite frankly, fell into like a spiral of depression, partially because of the law degree, but because of other things as well. Took a year out, started an angry blog where I used to just like talk about celebrity culture, and quite literally, a very kindly privileged guy that was in the year above me at university sort of said, you do know that you could get paid to do what you're doing in terms of your blog, it's called journalism. And I was like, oh okay, like it never crossed my mind that I could actually be paid to kind of rant on a like online platform. So I decided to apply for loads of internships, was unsuccessful for most of them. So then started a magazine aimed at young black teenagers called Birthday Magazine, with funding from O2 Think Big and Inspired, and they gave me a little bit of money so I could launch that, and just hired lots of other young black women that weren't being successful in internships to write for it, and then went back to university, got my law degree, and started reapplying for internships, and I think I was about 21, 22, and then that was it really. I got my first successful internship at The Telegraph, ironically, given my politics. And genuinely, if I'm being honest, like, had quite a good time there, left, and then went on to Channel 4 News, and that's the very truncated version of how I was journalism.
What did you study? Oh. Where did you find your inspiration to write?
Genuinely, I think I guess the reason I studied law to start with was because my mum, I think like most Nigerian children that end up in law, it's because their parents are kind of like, you can either be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, and those are the only kind of professions that are considered like, I guess, respectable, or not necessarily respectable, but more because I think coming from a working class background, they also want you to have that job security. But my parents actually wanted me to be an architect because I like to draw, so they kind of were like, well, we don't want you to be an artist. Well, you could like turn the drawing into something else, and they wanted me to be an architect. But the reason that they actually pushed me into law was because they said I used to argue a lot, and they were just like, you're really gobby, and like their understanding of law was like, yeah, you just like, shout at people across this thing. So they were like, yeah, you should go into law, and I was like, okay, great, argue with people for money, that sounds grand. And that was quite literally, I think that's exactly why I got into writing, which was just because I had loads of opinions and nowhere to put them. It's kind of like when you've shouted at your friends enough about what you think, it's kind of like, where else do you put it? So I just had lots of opinions about stuff and really wanted to not necessarily have the world read them, I just wanted to get them off my chest. And it was about everything from like, institutional racism to like Harry Styles' haircut. Like, it was just rubbish. Like, it was just, some of it was really in depth and other parts were just nonsense, but I just had really strong opinions on everything. And I think that's where my writing inspiration did come from and does come from.
Can I ask a cheeky question?
Of course.
So you talked about kind of with your family and your parents expecting you to go to a certain career.
Yeah.
So how do you convince kind of other people that a job or a career in the arts is like a valid?
God, that's such a good question. I think I got very lucky because my parents are, to be honest, slightly more laid back than I think your average Nigerian parents are. They are quite they were just like, as long as you're getting amazing grades, then you can do whatever you like. So they pretty much were kind of just like, do what you want. But then, as I said, they weren't particularly keen. Like, my parents loved the fact that I could draw and were very sort of supportive of the fact that I could do art, but again, really, and understandably, when I was a teenager, I was very kind of like angry about it and like, oh, you're not letting me live my life. But now I'm older, I'm like, yeah, they just wanted to make sure I could thrive in Brexit Britain, essentially. But looking back, I guess, as I said, I got lucky because my parents are quite laid back, and also I have an older sister who's an amazing journalist at BBC Africa. So I'm always like, she ran so I could fly, because if she hadn't kind of spent all that time like knocking down on that door and trying to prove to my parents that like you know, it was a worthwhile profession, it's like I pretty much didn't have to really do that much by the time it was my turn, like 6 years later. But I think what really helps, I suppose, at least what really helped me, and I think what really helped my sister, was, I mean, your parents at the end of the day, no matter how kind of, I don't know, like old-fashioned or old school they are in their thinking, it does usually tend to be for the best reasons. And I think proving that it was, like, without being crass, like lucrative, and that I could actually make money and support myself. And I've never asked my parents for anything because I can't. So being like, guys, I made this money from this thing that I know looks like just like, you know, a hobby to you, but I've actually been able to support myself, really helped. Also, parents love to see anything in print, like, or just anything that's got a face in it, like in a magazine or something they adore. But yeah, and I think on a kind of cheesy like Disney note, like my parents loved me and they genuinely just wanted to make sure I was happy and secure. And I think because I had my issues at university, they were very happy to see I was doing something that like wasn't making me depressed as like my law degree did. They would rather I was happy and a little bit poorer than like miserable and rich like most of my friends studied law.
What do you think your illness overweight or staying your life?
Oh my god, that's a great question that I read earlier. I genuinely think she would be very surprised that it's something that like I co-wrote, because yeah, I genuinely thought, as I said, I was going to be an architect or a lawyer. I didn't think I'd be doing anything that kind of was in the writing space professionally. But I think it would really be very useful, and I'm not even just saying that so like everyone can go out and buy it. Genuinely, I think it would have been very useful, just because there are a lot of experiences in there that I think I, to this day, like perhaps not really, I suppose, outside of the book, like I haven't really seen articulated anywhere else unless it's literally like in like my group chat with my friends or like just anecdotally. And I think there is again something about seeing something written down that just formalizes it and makes you feel like, oh my gosh, my feelings towards this are like valid. So I think, for instance, with certain things like, you know, colorism, so like you know, discrimination based on like skin tone as opposed to like racism and stuff, and things like misogyny, like, you know, sexism and racism combined against black women. Those are things that I felt growing up, and I knew that there was like a reason that like if a woman was gonna like win Big Brother or something, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm quite happy. And if a black man was gonna win, I'd be like, oh, I'm quite happy too. But then if a black woman won, I was like, this is really important to me, and I don't know why. It's like I think now I'm able to like, or if I watch something on TV and so like a black girl being like playing second fiddle, like as they do in every rom-com, I didn't understand why it kind of bothered me so much, and I couldn't articulate it. And I think having like words that, you know, people have like, they've actually made them proper terms, and having those, seeing those in books, yeah, I think it would have really helped me growing up, to be honest, to make me feel like it wasn't some imaginary chip on my shoulder, and that there actually was like credence to what I was feeling. That's my, sorry, very long-winded way of putting how I feel.
What would you say is the biggest difficulty young girls face today?
I'd probably say confidence, probably. What is probably one, I mean, aside from all the like glaring other like huge issues, but I think speaking specifically in the like arts industry or like media or like creative industries, I really think confidence is a huge issue. Today I was literally having to debate somebody about why I shouldn't have to work at like their event for free, that, you know, it was a ticketed event. And when it's, I've got a rule which is just, unless it's charity, unless it's schools, I'm not going to work for free. And I guess even trying to articulate that to them made me feel very big-headed. Like I was like, yeah, I deserve to be paid for my work, which is totally fine. But it made me feel like the way I punctuated it with like almost like emojis and like kisses to try and make it like, I'm so sorry, and I hope we can work together in the future, but I kind of need to eat, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to, do this time. But thank you so much for thinking of me, kiss, 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 emoji, like, do you know what I mean, like exclamation mark, to try and make sure that I didn't come across arrogant or egotistical. But like, it's the most basic thing, like, even if it's just a kind of, here's like 20p, like just as a token. It's just I could not believe I was at this point in my career like arguing about the fact that like it's a big company like that are like selling ticketed events and making money. I couldn't believe I was still having to argue that I deserve to be paid for my work, and I think that's definitely down to a lack of confidence, that I didn't feel like I could just say like, no way, that doesn't make sense, because this isn't even a charity or a school, like you're literally a massive conglomerate. Like, so yeah, I think confidence is a very big issue, and just understanding our worth, not just in a kind of mythical girl power sense, but in a genuine like finance sense as well.
Do you have any tips for how to kind of do that, or how to build that confidence? Or
Yeah, definitely. I'd say keep your receipts in terms of your work. Like, make sure that I guess it's two parts. Like, make sure you're on track of what you've done, because I think for me, I do a lot of stuff and I don't even remember, because it's been so many years. So I'm just kind of like, oh, perhaps I'm not. I don't have experience in this thing, and I'm like, wait a minute, I did this in 2016, so I can say that I deserve to be paid to do this. I've done this before, and I was paid for it. And I think because we're so used to kind of like posting our stuff on like Instagram and like Twitter and stuff, we don't necessarily like think of creating like, what are they called? Oh, God, like portfolios. I'm like, God, I really feel like such a like digitized person. What's a portfolio? But yeah, like I don't think we think about actually like gathering our like receipts anymore, for lack of a better phrase, and like putting our things in one place to say, this is everything that I've kind of achieved, so that even when you have that lack of confidence, you can remind yourself, like, I actually have done this stuff before. But I think, or just that I have experience, but also talking to other people is crucial. The amount of events I've done where it's been like, yeah, I was charged, like, I'm like, oh yeah, I really chuffed that I charged £10 for something. Obviously, just theoretically, I'd never be that insane. But like, I'm like, oh yeah, £10 or whatever, and then someone's like, oh, well, I got £1,000, and I'm like, how did you? And we've got the exact same kind of credentials, but it's just like, well, I asked for £1,000, so they gave me £1,000, and that literally can be it sometimes. The difference between being paid much less or much more than someone else. It's really important to have those networks of people that you trust to kind of just divulge, like, candidly what they're charging. And sometimes other people, I guess, do have the credentials to charge more, and there may be some disparities, but generally speaking, if you are asked to be on a panel with somebody else, it's because you tend to have the same credentials, and often most people are just being paid slightly more because they're asking for slightly more, so it's definitely good to have people you can talk to.
What do you think about affirmative action?
Oh gosh, this is the one question I actually did think about, because I was like, God, I really don't know. I think it's really important. I really, really do. And I think in an ideal world, it wouldn't obviously have to exist, because people would just get wherever they need to be, generally based on merit. But I think that's the issue. People think affirmative action is the opposite of getting people in on merit, whereas I see it as it's redressing the fact that generally most people don't get to where they are based on merit, if that makes sense. Like, I've been in enough newsrooms to know that like 90% of people actually have no clue what they're doing. Literally, like, I'll never forget when I first got to the Telegraph. They were really, really nice, but I could not believe how many people were in on work experience because, their dad knew somebody, or like their parents had worked for somebody else. And it sounds very naive, but I was literally gobsmacked. Like, I was just like, wait, you're allowed to do that? Like, I was so surprised, because I'd gone through this really rigorous process. But then that's the same everywhere. Like, it really is like who you know often. And I guess the way that we see society now is like all those people have, gotten there because they deserve it, and because that's meritocracy for you, which is obviously not a real thing. But I feel like affirmative action redresses that and actually does what we should be doing, which is actually tries to get people that are overlooked often because of whatever circumstances, to try and actually get people in on merit. I just hate the fact that it has to exist in this way, because of course you just end up in these like spaces where you have this core of very talented young people that are just immediately kind of seen in a particular way, as if they didn't get in, or they're kind of tokenistic, or they're seen as like, oh, well, you're this like, you've been you've been given a shortcut when it's literally the complete opposite. They've actually had to go through more hurdles in order to sort of get there. But yeah, I definitely am for it. I'm like, I just wish it didn't have to exist, but that's like with everything. I wish, like, classism and racism and sexism didn't have to exist. But yeah, I think in the world that we live in now, it has to exist. It's our only kind of shot at like having spaces that are representative of the world that we live in and genuinely giving people the chances that they deserve in like any industry.
What would you say is your proudest achievement?
My proudest achievement? Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I'd probably say, I always say Select Your Lane, so I'll try and think of something different. I would probably say interviewing Jordan Dunn for the cover of Vogue. That was a big one because Vogue is just so external to anything to do with me, like in terms of like how I see my life. I'm just like, I can't believe that somehow I managed that. But yeah, that was a real biggie, and also she really enjoyed the interview. Not to like blame her anymore, but she liked it. She did, and I think that meant a lot to me because I think again it's one of those things where we kind of like see diversity as like this kind of tokenistic thing that like has no value. But I think the reason she liked the interview is because she knew I was somebody that was interested in asking her questions that I know people hadn't necessarily thought to ask her before because they just weren't aware of certain facets of her, like, I guess, lived experience. So the questions that she was often asked, according to her, were quite like stock and quite like, didn't really get into like who she is as a person. But things like, for instance, she's a very slim woman, as most models are. I was asking her, in the black community, that's not necessarily the beauty standard. And even though she's absolutely gorgeous, in the black community, the beauty standard is to be curvaceous, even more so now with like, the whole kind of like Nicki Minaj and like Kim Kardashian aesthetic. So I asked her about that and she was like, no one's ever thought to ask me that because in, I suppose, their kind of understanding of what the standard of beauty is, it's been a white standard of beauty. So she kind of fits that in some way with her body type. But she was like, yeah, it was really hard growing up because I wasn't considered in the black community, like, because she was so slim, it wasn't something that was considered attractive. And I think that, again, those are the kind of things that we don't realise actually are the benefits of diversity and diversity of class, of age, of background, because you just are able to kind of reflect the actual world that we live in and get more kind of interesting stories told. And yeah, so I think that was a very big career highlight, and yeah, I don't know when I'm going to top that one. For sure.
Amazing. Should we take some questions from the floor? Does anyone have any questions for Yomi or Jaya?
Can you tell us a bit about the process of getting Slay in Your Lane published and what that was like?
Sure, that was intense. The long and short of it was literally one day Elizabeth, my best friend and co-author, called me and was like, she worked, God, sorry, that light. you asked me if there was a problem, I was like, it'd be fine, but yeah. She had spent a lot of her time in the city, in Canary Wharf, and was from a corporate background, and was saying that, like, obviously she was facing lots of different hurdles as a young black woman from Peckham, and she wanted a book that kind of addressed it, and she'd read loads of different books. She'd read like Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg and like Girl Boss by Sophia Amoruso, and I know a lot of people bag on those kind of books, but she was like, you know what, they actually gave her a kind of foundation, and it did help, but she was like, there was just this massive elephant in the room that like she was black and she was working class, and like they didn't really address that. And it was kind of the same for me, but I was working in, like, I suppose the thing about the creative industries, as we know, there's that kind of, we're all kind of too creative and cool to be racist and sexist and stuff like that. But I was facing the exact same stuff. But from being from Croydon and being a working class black woman, I was like, I'm not expecting those hurdles in the media, but still facing them. And often sometimes they'd be worse because, like, I think because no one kind of identified themselves as part of the problem. So she was like, yeah, like, you should really write this book. And write a book about like navigating these spaces, and I was like, that's an incredible idea, an idea I can't run off with because like it'll probably ruin our friendship because it's that good an idea. So I was like, yeah, we should definitely do it together. And yeah, I remember first we were like, well, you don't know what to do in terms of navigating your space, and neither do I, so we need to find people that do. So then we kind of were like, we need to start interviewing trailblazing black rich women and asking them how they managed to get to where they are. So before we decided to do that, we literally Googled like how to get a book deal. and then this blog post came up, and it was just very straightforward, like point one was like you need an agent. So I went on Twitter, and Nikesh Shukla, the curator of The Good Immigrant, the editor of The Good Immigrant, had put out a tweet like maybe a month before saying like, if you're black or minority ethnic and you have a book idea and you have no clue how to get like published, you should email me your proposal. So like we were like, okay, great, we need a proposal then. What's that? Google what proposal was. Pulled one together. It was insane. Like it literally looked like a Beyonce lookbook. Like on it, we had pictures of Solange on the front. We had like pictures of like gifs of Beyonce and stuff. It was crazy because we've never done a proposal before, so we were like, we're gonna make this look so fabulous. And and then we sent that to Nikesh. She was like, this is great. And then we sent that to who sent it on to Juliet Pickering, who was an agent at Blake Friedman, who was like, yeah, this is great. We just need to remove all the pictures. And then and we got published because Juliet then like taught us like how to actually properly write a proposal, and then she took it to auction, and we had a 9-way bidding auction, and we were so shocked because we were just like, this is like, it was quite literally like, as I said, we've made like a catalogue of like Beyonce images, kind of like with the odd bit of like, this is why we should write a book kind of thing. But yeah, I think Juliet and Nikesh, they both really kind of saw the importance of what it was we were trying to do. And I think before we'd even written our proposal, we'd already started to DM a couple of the women that we wanted to speak to. And bear in mind, we didn't have a publisher attached. We didn't have any kind of like credentials whatsoever. We'd literally just DM people and be like, hello, Mallory Blackman, we think we're great. Literally, and be like, can we interview you for a book? And literally, like almost every single one of them got back. And we're like, sure, like, where's the book? And we're like, oh, we don't know yet. We haven't written a proposal yet. But yeah, and I think that just speaks to how much they wanted to like kind of pass on their wisdom and stuff. But it was a very, I think, to be honest, I don't think it was a process that was illustrative of what most people's publishing journeys look like. I hate to use the word luck, but I do think we got very lucky in terms of seeing Nikesh's tweet, because if not, we would literally, I remember before that we were like emailing like info@HarperCollins, like, hi, this is our book deal. Like we've got a book idea. So yeah, I think we're very grateful for finding that tweet for sure.
Yes.
If you have like a mantra or one piece of advice that you would give to like an aspiring journalist, what would it be?
Again, not to sound too like corny and like Disney-ish, but like genuinely authenticity over everything. Like being like every single woman that we interviewed for the book was like, I think especially like being visible black women in the spaces and industries they were in, they were like, you can't really hide that. Like they were like, regardless of how much you try to assimilate, you know, like straighten your hair, lighten your skin, anything, speak in a particular accent to assimilate. And I completely understand the pressures to do that, and it's something that I think pretty much anybody that's not a heterosexual, able-bodied white man with loads of money has had to experience in some way. But they were like, these aren't things you're going to be able to hide, and also seeing that value in the difference of perspective that you bring. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, like, and why I think remaining authentic is so important, because a lot of the stories that I've done, whilst, you know, it has definitely been a slog in getting them told, most of the breaks and most of the things that I've done, and I've been very proud of, it has been just one person sort of being like, we've never written about this before, this is really interesting, this is really different, and we're going to be interested in this, like we're interested in like sort of telling this story because we've just not heard it. And I think that's the kind of beauty of difference, essentially, being able to tell stories that people may not hear that often. So yeah, like I completely understand the like pressures definitely to assimilate, but I do feel the more that I've lent into like difference and lent into the fact that like I'm never gonna be like a rich white man, like the more I've kind of embraced that, the more I feel that I've been able to tell stories that have done very well because I'm just telling it in my own voice.
I think that's a really good place to end. So thank you so much, Yomi.